doing it. You supposed to be happy you sitting there with Kid L. Why you mad?
Rock and roll. Todd Perkins is in the building. What's happening, man?
Man, I'm just working and grinding,
Yeah.
hitting the pavement. I mean, this is what I do.
Yes.
And now, running for the mayor of the city of Detroit, it's an extra larger layer right now because we got 139 square miles to cover.
A lot to cover. Is this the most pressure you've ever been in as far as reaching a goal?
It's like a big trial. As a lawyer, no matter the client, no matter the case, right then when you're in court, that is the most important thing. Yeah. And this has just been the most important thing over a longer, sustained period of time. Yeah. So, lengthwise, yes, the longest trial I've had.
Really?
And we look to continue the trial after August 5th at, getting into the general and, really getting into people's mind how important it is to vote in the primary. Yes. A lot of people don't see the importance of that, but getting into the general and then continuing the trial to November 4th.
Yes.
So,
and then you have like a long term ahead of that. After that, you have a lot of things to execute on, right? If you get elected.
Yeah, you got a transition plan. Being successful, you got a transition plan. You got to have the wind down and disconnect with my firm. And even after that, after November 4th, I've planned to do at least one or two more trials. Just because clients have been waiting on those trials for a while, and they have blessed me with the trust to finish that out for them.
Amazing. Your family has been here since the 1920s?
My family has been here since, I would say, the 1920s. My father was born here in 29. His father was here, I believe, a couple of years before that. Maybe he came from Arkansas. He was born in, I want to say, 1887 or 89. And he came here. My grandmother was my paternal grandmother was born down south and came here. So yeah, 20s definitely. And my mom was born in 38, and her father was born in 1910. Yes. So, and he migrated from with his father and his two brothers. His mom had died before he was 14. And they moved up here in the Great Migration to the north. Did
anybody in the history of your family ever hedge towards politics at all or anything like that?
My grandfather, who was the barber, my father's father. And interestingly enough, he was a brilliant man, but didn't have a formal education. In fact, my dad taught him how to read. And at one point in time in the 40s, what people don't understand is that black people before Franklin Delano Roosevelt were Republicans because the Democratic Party was responsible for Jim Crow. They created the Dixiecrats. So my grandfather was one of the top black Republicans in the state of Michigan.
Wow.
He was very political. He was... I believe he had an elected position. He was actually the first barber prosecutor. He was a barber by trade, and he became a barber prosecutor and someone who enforced the barber rules and regulations. And so, I think that would be the first known entry into the political arena by any of my lineage or my family.
Wow, incredible. When your father was, you said your father taught your grandpa how to read, basically?
Yeah.
Wow. So he was, what was he like? What was your father like?
Oh, father was brilliant. He was a concert level violinist.
Whoa.
He was an individual who was part of an enrichment program at, I believe, 16, would have gone to the University of Chicago. And this is like 1945, 1946. But my grandfather was killed, and they had two businesses, the barbershop and a restaurant. And my grandmother asked my dad to come back home and not to go into the University of Chicago and come back and help with the businesses. She couldn't see the value of him being that young, black, in the 40s, having an opportunity at an elite education, and she just didn't understand. And I don't think my dad could appreciate it at 16 or 17 either. And he came back and helped her run the businesses. Oh. And ultimately, my dad wound up continuing the barber tradition. And he went to Wayne State maybe a year or two, but he stopped going. And ultimately, my dad did graduate from Wayne State with my younger brother at the same time. And he walked behind my younger brother because my brother's name is Sean and my dad's name was William. And now that's the younger brother who's a judge right now.
Very, very cool.
Yeah, so my dad said, "Hey, I look like a damn fool sending all these boys to school, and I don't have my degree." So he went.
He
back.
really wanted to be an influence in life. Like,
he was. I mean, he was dynamic. He was, he was just, like I said, he's everything that a father should be, and everything I hope that I can be to my kids to be a father.
With your grandfather being a barber, and it's that's. You wonder what happened for somebody to want to attack him. Like, what was the situation?
It was he got into an argument on Oakland Avenue in the neighborhood where I live at today. I've lived in the North End for a large part of my life, and he was on Oakland Avenue, and he got into an argument or a fight with another barber, and my grandfather, apparently, I believe he had a knife. The barber wound up shooting him.
Jesus.
Yeah. Or a blade. I don't know how the argument declined, but he ultimately was killed on Oakland Avenue.
It's tragic.
Yeah.
It's insane. Barbers going at it. I've never heard of that in my life.
Oh, I mean, well, you would think that because it's the 40s, you don't hear about the things like what we hear today.
Right.
The proliferation of violence that we have right now in our society. But
yes, and he started it through rock bottom, right? So he was kind of during that. Was he during that?
Well, his barbershop was in Black Bottom.
Oh, sorry, Black Bottom.
It was in Black Bottom. Yeah. And, he came here from Arkansas by way of, I believe, St. Louis is where he learned how to cut hair. And then he stopped over in Ohio. And then ultimately he, put roots into the city of Detroit.
When you think about the Black Bottom era and the redlining and everything that happened with Detroit, what's your perspective on it now, looking at it from a historical point?
Well, I mean, has the redlining stopped? I mean, when you think about insurance, the redlining is still here. It's still the actual things that cause discrimination and the actual, the physical aspects of discrimination, like violence, the lynchings, those things have left. And by law, they've been declared illegal. But the other effects, the more sedate, you don't really see them, but they affect our society and create intense poverty in areas. And studies will show where you have intense poverty, you also have violence that follows. So, the redlining with insurance. I say that, redlining with insurance, redlining with borrowing money for homes. So it makes things cost prohibitive, and you have families who are already, eking out and just making it, and then you're paying as much on a car insurance as you do a car note per month, if not more, and you cross Alta Road and you see a 50% decline. I mean, these are facts.
If people from, let's just say, outside of the city come into the city to get a loan or to delegate with insurance in any type of way, is there a prejudice factor, or is it literally like, no, they know who they're targeting when they're taxing people on these things?
Well, I think as a general rule, it's more geographical than racial. But let's not escape that. In America, race matters. We know that. But I believe that just asking that question without any parameters, it's geographical. If you come in here, and your address is at this location, that's what it's going to turn out to be. And, there's a lot of factors that determine, the insurance rate in a particular area. And one of the important factors is like something called the crime score. And, that's why in my platform, reduction of crime, particularly in our neighborhoods, has always been the number one issue.
right? Because of do you agree with the statistics contributing to the insurance hike-ups, or do you think it's not justified?
Tell me which statistics are you really
From what I
relating to?
see in a lot of platforms or from media, and I might be ignorant to the fact, but the crime rate being higher in Detroit than some other cities.
Yeah, crime rate,
Theft rate, crime, any type.
People who don't have insurance, accidents, all of those are go into the calculus of creating it. But do they take advantage of the city of Detroit? Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I do believe that there's another, if you're going to be an advocate for the people in the city of Detroit and you're going to represent these people in the city of Detroit, you need to go to the insurance companies and we need to sit down and figure this out. Whereas, our current mayor, Mike Duggan, wants to say, well, I don't know if he's actually said this, getting rid of PIP, personal injury protection. That's when you have an accident and you're entitled to have it, when you have that on your insurance, you're entitled to use that to get better, to have household services if you can't cook for yourself. Those are very important things about insurance. And now with the new law, you can take it out, you can reduce it, all those things, which, I'm against it, but I understand the fact that can people afford it? But they have to understand what they're giving up. I don't think that people understand, if you take this insurance, why this is less. I don't think that's necessarily explained to them enough that, well, if you have an accident, you won't have and be entitled to have insurance. You're going to have to use your own insurance or Medicaid, Medicare. You're going to have to use some other secondary insurance or your primary insurance and not have the benefit of auto insurance paying for your medical needs.
Wow.
And I don't think that that's being told to them expressly.
Right.
Because, I think people would take a double take and I'm not going out here intending to have an accident, but that's not why we buy insurance. We buy insurance in case stuff happens.
Wow, man. We're talking about you from day zero. When I think some social media posts coming up saying you were born in the north end of Detroit.
Well, I wasn't born on the north end. I was raised on the north end for most part of my life.
Where were you born?
I was born, my parents lived in Sherwood Forest. And then the finances go away. And, you deal with the things that businesses don't go the way that they do. And shortly thereafter, we lived on the north end. I moved in with our grandparents, with my mom's parents, so my maternal grandparents, and that's the house I live in today.
Really, to this day?
Yeah, to this day. Well, I not continuously.
Okay.
I moved out, and when I got married, and we moved into different condos, and ultimately left the city, and then came back.
Wow. And through elementary, middle school, things of that nature, did you ever think you were going to be where you are today? Did you ever think about law? Did you ever think about any of these professions?
Well, something, my parents always told us to start dreaming about success. No matter, even if you look around and, sometimes we're in situations we didn't have a phone, sometimes don't have lights or gas, those are the realities, but those are just temporary conditions. And they would say that, and even as a kid, you're disappointed even in your parents, like, wow, this is what we're living in. But they never told us. They told us always, one, getting an education will allow you to expand your horizons, and believing in that. And two, never let your current condition map out your future. So, yeah, I didn't necessarily know I was going to be practicing law, but I always felt that I was going to strive for success and not be afraid of falling down and getting back up and ultimately finding some success in life. So sitting here right now, no, I didn't. I believe this could happen. Yes, I always did, no matter what current condition I was in.
Did you have an easy upbringing as far as meeting people, being social? Did life ever get super complicated with that, or were you able to just find easy traction just growing up in Detroit?
Yeah, you kind of have to. If you're going to make it, particularly if you're going to make it in the hood, somebody told me a long time ago, and a closed mouth don't get fed. So if you're not going to say anything, then you won't bridge and build the relationships that you need to have. And again, when you don't have things like material things, relationships mean a lot more. And sometimes I think we need to pare away and step away from our material items in order to understand the essence of life and to understand what's real in relationships. So, I'll share something, and a lot of people don't know this, is that when my parents saw their downfall as far as economically, and, we weren't, we're no longer in Shore Forest, no longer living on a golf course. And it was, and living and growing up in the neighborhood, and when I say the neighborhood, I mean the hood, it was those people who today are my friends more so than the people that I never really got a chance to build a relationship. I'm 7, 8 years old. You're not really having significant relationships other than one. There's one guy that's been consistent through and throughout, and he's my son's godfather today, but he's an exception to the norm. So there was a sort of a fragmentation or a breaking of sorts, but it's never been a breaking with the relationships that I've had in my neighborhood in the North End. Never. I mean, don't get me wrong. We fall out, we beef, we do a lot of stuff, but it's still love. He could still come over to my house, you know what I'm saying? And, I'm not even talking to him, but, my mom's going to let him come over and, you guys got to make up. And if you don't make up, he's still going to be in the house. Yeah. So you could just, and I got 5 brothers. So I have relationships with guys in the neighborhood where I may not even be talking to them, but my brothers do. And then they start making fun of me. So, so you got to get you not have a thin skin.
Yeah.
Those kind of things in your younger years, they kind of really mold you and allow you to have better relationships as you get older.
Yes.
But you cherish those relationships that you have. It's just like one of the guys in the studio right now. I mean, I've known him almost all my life. Yes. Even when I didn't live on the North End, even though we were headed there, been knowing him, and his mom knows my mom, or his mom knew my mom. Yeah. So it's just
when you're young, it's all genuine, right? So it's almost like you can't even fake it or try to construct yourself in a certain way just to have friends. You were athletic when you were young. 4 years playing college football.
Yeah, college football, and I played college football. Played football in high school. Ran track, and doing those things really. I'll give you an example. When you play sports. Yeah. My grade point average during the season in which I'm playing sports, which you would think I would have less time, my grade point average was better during those terms and during those seasons than when I didn't have a sport to play. So it really made you become more disciplined.
Yeah.
And you carry that discipline into your adult life, and I think that's the value of playing sports. I mean, there's a small number of people who are going to go beyond college, or even go to college and then go beyond college into the pros. So that number is so small that sometimes you kind of know those people that are going to go by 8th grade. You can see them.
You feel it.
You just watch it.
Fast twitch muscles, and all that stuff.
Oh yeah. Well, you just see the separation. You know what I mean? You just see it.
How hungry they are. Mm-hmm. There's so many things applied to it.
Yeah.
Did you guys go far?
What's that?
In for college football, did you guys get?
Oh, we won the Ivy League championship my senior year.
What year was that?
1990 and 1991.
So you guys won. Is that like the number one?
That's in that league, yes.
Yeah, that's cool.
I mean, don't get me wrong. Ivy League is not like Big Ten. It's not. Sure. But I mean, it's very competitive. And our quarterback played for the Philadelphia Eagles. So a lot of times you'll see there are people who leave the Ivy League and go into the pros. It's more of the exception than the norm, but it happens.
And did you go for your law degree initially? Was that the first thing that you sought after?
No, I went to college. I went to college just because that's what I had been taught to do.
Yes,
I'd been taught to do that from my parents, who at the time neither one of them had a degree, but they knew what we needed. And I went to college because that's what I was supposed to do. That was what they made us to do. How they raised us to go to college. All 5 of my brothers.
What'd you major in at first?
History.
Oh, cool.
And I majored in history and I minored in French.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. So then I went to school over in France for a while. And then I came back. After I came back, graduated from college, I used to teach French to kids on the East Side.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
What'd you learn from France?
What did I learn?
Yeah,
culture. I mean, when you learn a language here, and I don't know if you speak, or if you're bilingual.
Yep.
But if you learn a language here, you really don't know how it's spoken until you're over there. You know, and that's kind of like, you know, you kind of, you know, you roll part of the letters, you know, and it just has a certain texture to it that you can't mimic in a classroom.
Yes.
You know, even if you go to Quebec, which is in Canada, there's a different dialect, you know, there's a different French than it is across.
Yes. Arabic language is the same way. There's like Fusha. There's different types of dialects and everything like that.
There's many in the Arabic culture.
Yeah, it's crazy out here.
Yeah.
So when did you decide like, okay, law is going to be the focus now?
Probably maybe around my senior year. You know, but at the same time, about your sophomore year, you kind of identify your major. And when I was a kid, I thought I might be a doctor, or stockbroker. I don't know. I just wanted to do something, and along the way, I really went. You know, something, and I don't talk about this a lot. I really wanted to do what my dad wanted me to do, which was be a lawyer. He was supposed to be a lawyer. And, you know, his dad wanted him to be a lawyer, and it didn't happen. And my dad, before he passed, had he not had cancer, he was intending, even at 70 years old, to go get his law degree. Wow. And, you know, so he wanted one of us to become a lawyer. So I wasn't doing anything. You know, I got my degree. So I said, I'll go to law school. Wow. No, and it's really not that simple, but it really was to sort of allow my dad to dream through me.
Yes.
And, you know, but because, you know, I always look at it like I was, you know, I'd be nothing without my folks. You know, without my parents, I could easily be in a situation like one of my clients. You know, in fact, I remember this is in 2015, and I went to see a client who we grew up with, and, you know, he had gained a fair amount of success in the streets. And a lot of times, you know, the thing about it is it catches up with you.
Yeah.
You, no matter how successful you can be, it will catch up with you. Very rarely, you know, like a rich man walking through the eye of a needle, you know, very rarely are you going to be able to hear about a story in which someone walks out unscathed from, well, let's just call it miscreant in the street.
I call it street entrepreneurship.
Yeah, okay. All right. I like that. Okay. And I was having a conversation with him, and he recalled, I remember his birthday, and the guy in the studio, he'll know what I'm talking about. His birthday, he goes out and buys a Corvette. This is like right before I became a lawyer. So it may have been 95. I became a lawyer in 96. So it's like 95, 96. But, you know, I'm on the north end, and we're outside. I didn't think we were playing basketball around the corner from my house. Ultimately, I come around to my house, and the guy has a car accident in his brand new Vet. Wrecks it. But he's got insurance. And, you know, he runs from the accident because he's going to run from the accident. He probably had been drinking. And the guy's talking to my dad, and my dad is telling him, he says, look, you cannot do this. The same things we're talking about right now, he's telling him that.
Yeah.
You know, and that happened. This is like almost 20 years later. I'm seeing the guy, and he's sitting across from me, and he's locked up at the time, and I'm his lawyer. We spent the whole conversation talking about that conversation he had with my dad. And he says, man, if I had had your dad, I might be where you're at. You know, and so I've never taken that for granted, having the parents that I've had.
Yeah.
And not only that, it's the impact that they've had on other people who weren't even their kids. But, you know, our neighborhood, has its ups and downs and has its, its gripes and its beefs. But at the end of the day, it's still something that you can call yours.
Yeah.
Or at least used to. It's not the same anymore because there's very few people on the North End that lived on the North End when we grew up.
Well, community has changed in neighborhoods a lot, right? When you first were growing up in neighborhoods, it's like you feel like everybody's mom was your mom, everybody's dad was your dad.
Oh yeah, that part has changed for sure.
Now it's almost like, hey, well, watch where you're stepping. Like,
Yeah,
don't
that
step on
part
my
has
grass.
changed.
Like,
Yeah. I wasn't even, you went deeper than I was even going, but I was just talking about just people living in the houses and the structures that still exist. Because, if you come through in the 80s and part of the 90s, our North End was just burning to the ground, literally. A house burning down every day, and during some summers, and then you remember you used to have Devil's Night, that whole, bad tradition that we've, thankfully
Isn't
we've
that still
got.
around?
No,
Devil's Night's over with.
no. I mean that that's one thing I think we've turned the corner on that bad piece of culture, and we don't have it. I mean, for many years they had. What they did do to get rid of Devil's Night, they called it Angel's Night. I gotta get, that was, I think the culture has changed, and we don't see that that activity.
Do you remember what the news was like during Devil's Night? Do you remember like seeing the news? What was like the perspective of Devil's Night when you would see it?
Well, I mean, it was like you would watch TV. I mean, this is like in the 80s, 90s, maybe even the late 70s. I was born in 70s, so I got the full breadth of the 70s. And, it was a big thing. I mean, they had cameras going around the city and chasing fires, and it became a real part of our subculture. And then, I'd say within the past 10, 15 years, we've sort of moved away from that. Thank God.
What year did you say you graduated and actually got your law degree?
Graduated from high school in '88 from U of D, and then I went to college. Went to Dartmouth. Graduated from Dartmouth in '92. I took a year off, taught French, in a enrichment program at a school on the east side of Detroit, and then I started at U of D Law School in 1993. And graduated in 96.
96. So that's the bar exam.
The bar exam comes after law school. Took it, passed it, and then I went and started working for myself.
Were you immediately independent?
Immediately.
So you didn't want to work for anybody?
Why? Why?
Learn the ropes a little bit?
For what? For what? I mean, entrepreneurship has run in my family. My dad was a barber. He also ran a construction company. My grandfather, same way, ran a restaurant. Now, my mom's side, my grandfather was real disciplined. He was a guy that, worked at Dodge Main, and, he didn't believe in credit. He paid cash for everything. Yeah. So in that respect, they couldn't be any more different. Yeah. But my dad told me, he says, look, you've got a law degree. You have an opportunity to create something that you want to design. He says, it's no fault if you want to go and work for some law firm, that's fine. He says, but never be conditioned by, because you're living their dream.
Yeah.
And you're not living your own. So, right now you have nothing. So what if you fail right now, and you give it 2 to 3 years and you fail, he says, you're still 26, 27, 28 years old. Yeah. He says, you can go on and go and jump into a law firm if you want to. He says, otherwise, if you don't, then you'll stay out and you'll help other people live their dream and, create that in your own firm.
Sure.
And it's come around.
Were you, in the beginning, is it like, are you more court appointed at first, or is it like you're just actually finding clients?
See, now let me tell you something. This is the benefit of growing up in the hood. So, yeah, I initially would get court appointments, because if I'm going to take somebody's money, I want to know how to represent them effectively. I can be aggressive as I want to be, but if I don't know the rules, if I don't know the regulations, if I don't know the law, well, the law is not the issue. The law is the application of the law. It's where I'm at right now it has less to do with the law than the interconnecting and the interpersonal contact that you have with jurors, with the prosecutor, with your client, and all of those things that you bring from a life of experience that you infuse and you throw upon them, right? So when I was first starting out, I would take court appointments to experience what it's like, and really watch. I would spend a lot of time watching the real stars in the courthouse. You know, Cornelius Pitts, Gerald Evelyn, Otis Culpepper. My mentor was Marlon Evans, and I would watch them because I had time, and then I would do writing for them. And see, here's one of the things I had initially. See, I had relationships with judges at a very early age because before I started law school, I met Coleman Young. Ultimately, I was a business partner with Coleman Young after he retired. But when I was in law school, after right when I started law school and a little bit before, I volunteered with the Democratic Party. So I was helping, as a young person, I was helping judges get elected, which created that personal relationship. So by the time I became a lawyer, I had access to these judges that even these big time lawyers didn't have or didn't care to have. And sometimes when you need something, and you haven't nurtured those relationships and you need it. And then it looked around and this is a young kid, he's got all these relationships and all these judges' phone numbers, and I had it. And so that was what created an opportunity for me to do something for them, and to learn from these lawyers and open the door. And then I can write. I am unapologetic about my writing. I can write, and I know how to write. I know how to talk, but I can write. And oftentimes a lot of lawyers who are busy, like today, I don't write as much because I have a team, but I edit. Yes. But that was what gave me opportunity to build those relationships. And along the way, I'm getting a couple of court assignments here and there, and it allows me to learn the process, because procedure is just as important as the law when you're talking about going into court. Yeah. Because if you don't know procedure, they'll bounce you right out of court.
I think I learned that from my cousin Vinny.
Yeah,
he nailed the procedure down, right?
Oh yeah, and here's the thing: as entertaining as that movie was, or is, it really does talk about some of the actual procedures. Like you look at some of the movies, like one of the worst movies legally, as far as a lawyer, even though I love the movie, is New Jack City.
Oh my God.
Nowhere in the world are you going to have somebody who gets up on, like Nino Brown, gets up in there, pontificates about all these other things and gets to talk to the prosecutor like he did, and then really point the finger at it and accuse someone, and that actually works. It doesn't. But in My Cousin Vinny, I mean, they did go, he did learn about discovery. Like, he didn't realize that the prosecutor has to give you everything. And if they get caught not giving you something, now you can fry his ass. You know what I mean? So, it didn't happen in that movie, but you're learning that process. And that was one of the movies that, in law school we would watch. The Nuremberg trials. I mean, that's a little older movie, but there's a lot of movies. To Kill a Mockingbird.
I think they said 12 Angry Men is like the
best.
12
Angry Men. What a jury, what they do as far as jurors, the magic that happens in a jury room where 12 people who don't know each other have to come up with a unanimous decision. That's magic. Yeah. That's the magic of life, and something I probably never will experience because I'm a lawyer. So if I'm in jury selection and I'm sitting in that jury box, if they're asking me questions, they're just asking me questions just to mess with me, because they're not going to pick me. If one side wants me, the other side's not. So I'm out. Wow. So I probably won't have that experience. I hope to one of these days to be able to, and I wish a lot of people would not want to try to get out of jury service, because, I mean, without jurors, we don't have the legal system that we have.
Yeah, people try to evade it by saying like religious beliefs and they can't persecute somebody and all those types of things. And
sometimes, yeah, and then people they just don't want to be there.
They don't want to be there. Yeah.
But it's almost like, I'll tell you another thing, another civic thing. It's almost like people don't want to vote. It confounds me, man. I mean, I lose my mind thinking about the people that died, particularly my people, black people, and all my people, but particularly black people. We died. Our ancestors died for us to vote. And it was no more telling than, I don't know if you were around then, but when apartheid left South Africa and they had the opportunity to vote, people stood in line for 2 days to vote. People walked days to get to the polls and be able to vote. I mean, older people, and then I think about when my grandmother, who never thought in her lifetime, my dad didn't actually get a chance to see Obama get elected, but my grandmother cried when she saw a black president. And, next year she passed away, but I mean, it was something to see. Yes. And so that's what people need to see when they understand why, and voting was so easy. And, I used to work for the Democratic Party, so we worked the polls. I'm like 21, 23 years old. And I'm sitting there, and I was a guy who, I didn't necessarily man the polls, but when someone was manning the polls, would have to go home, they'd send me out, and, they'd go home, want to go use the restroom. I give them a spell, and I'd drive around to the various different districts and different polling sites, and I'd sit there, and I see these guys going to the store. I said, man, there's nobody in here. Come on in and vote. Man, I'll be back. And so then, this is an actual event, and so I come back to that same poll that night to help shut it down, but it's about half an hour before it closes. I see the same dudes. I said, man, did y'all vote early? And the guys at the poll like, no, they didn't come in. But these guys had been back and forth from that store 2 or 3 times and just won't walk in there and vote. Yeah. Now there's some people, and I have to respect the fact and do something about it and inspire them rather than, I'm not here to talk about them, but some people have given up hope. Some people don't believe it matters. Right. And there's a lot in our society that has fueled that. And so we have to show them why it matters and why it even more matters on a local election than even on a national. Yes. But we understand how it is on a national level. Look what's happening now. I mean, it's...
Yeah, you're right. People don't feel like their vote counts for whatever reason. Yeah. Especially when you see landslides. You're like, it doesn't even matter if I do. You look at the history and the analytics and like, what would have been the point if I voted or not? But what is your message to people and how do you convince people to vote?
Well, one, in the city of Detroit, with this race, with the mayor's race, I mean, it is so significant about, look at if you want something in your neighborhoods done, you're going to have to vote for someone like me. I'm a guy, obviously, where I'm at and why I sit here right now is because of the neighborhood that I grew up in. That neighborhood has, in my kickoff speech, those things, it took me days to go back over it. But, I think about it. When I first started practicing, going back, and I won't leave myself with that question you had, but I got to tell the story. And, the guys in the neighborhood gave me a car. I didn't have a car. They gave me a car. And when the car broke down, they fix it, and, that car I kept for a couple of years, even when I didn't need to keep it, I could afford a car because, it got me here and there. And I never really was overwhelmed with material things. That's one of the things that, never really have been consumed by that idea of materialism. So, I kept it until it just wouldn't go anymore, like I'm sitting out in front of court and it might start up. So, I go back to that and, in the neighborhoods, I see so many people who have given up. Yes. I see, and for good, for good measure sometimes, you look at these statistics are just shocking. You have the literacy rate through the roof. Although they're making steps to better the crime reduction, you think about it. When you're talking about the low crime stats, and they're saying, this is the lowest murder rate since 1966, 1965. But that's not really telling you something when in 1966 and 1965, we had over 1.5 million people here. Right. And now we only have 650,000, 640,000. So, you look at those numbers and they're not telling the real story. Although in recent times, we're seeing the decline in crime, but it has to be more. People are still afraid to leave, to go certain places. Kids are afraid to go certain places. So, that's what has to happen and has not happened. When yet on the other side, you see downtown, it's continuing to grow, and, you don't want that to stop either. But at some point in time, you're going to have to turn yourself and double down on these neighborhoods. And that's why you got to vote.
Yes.
You have to vote for the life of your city as you know it, for the life of your neighbor, for the life of your neighborhood as you know it. You got to vote.
Yes.
And now, not in the general, but you got to vote now and the general. And it's so simple to vote. I mean, they've made it simpler, although they have put hurdles in place. People are spending billions of dollars a year to make it more difficult to vote. That should be a red flag to make you want to say, man, I gotta vote now. If those people over there are trying to stop me from voting, they're directly opposite the interests of mine.
How are they trying to stop people?
Well, they've put in place like a lot of times. Well, I'll tell you what's happened here. We had people and told people, look, you can go vote down at the clerk's office. So people don't necessarily want to vote anyway. And all you have to do is put a little hurdle in their place, and they might give up. You send them down there, and they said, well, it's too late. It's almost approaching 4:30. Number one, it's not 4:30. Plus, you said it was 5 o'clock when you're going to vote. So don't tell them that. Then they're saying you don't have an identification. Well, why wouldn't you tell them that if you don't have an identification, that you could fill out an affidavit of identity? You can fill those things out and still vote. Why would you discourage people? So that's even in this local race that's happened. I've seen it happen. So, and I've called it out, and hopefully being the squeaky wheel, it'll wake people up to do that. And then you're talking about other things that they require people to do, like the identification, that you have to have. What about homeless people? They need an address. So they need to identify where they live. And, they've tried to say, look, if you don't have an address, you can't vote. How fair is that?
What was the percentage from the last election with Duggan becoming mayor? What was how much
I
did
want
he
to say
leave
it was, I want to say it was 14% or 15%. It was low. I mean, it's
15% of Detroit?
Yes.
Who is the contender that was the closest to him?
Well, it was ultimately who went into the general was Duggan and Anthony Adams.
Okay.
And then even in the general, Duggan won with less than 70,000 votes. He won the whole city of Detroit with less than 70,000 votes. And I think Anthony Adams might have gotten 25,000, maybe 30,000, but that's less than a total of 100,000 votes cast.
How many people voted in Detroit for the last election?
So here's the thing. We know there are voters out there, right? Because in the last presidential election, we had, I think it's a little bit south of 250,000 people voted.
For the president. Okay.
So now we recognize that there's a downturn or there's less participation in the local elections, which that to me doesn't make sense, because a local election, those people who are locally installed or locally elected are going to affect your life sooner than on the federal level.
Do you know the number for how many people voted for Detroit mayor in the last run?
That's what I said. It was Duggan won with about 69,000 votes, and so Anthony Adams had another 25 or 30. So it's total of less than 100,000 for the mayor race.
So with a population of about 650,000,
right?
And for the presidential run, over 200,000 people from Detroit.
Over 200. It was 220,000 for Kamala Harris, and it was 20-some thousand for Trump. And then they had one of the third party independent or another party who maybe Jill Stein who maybe got another. I think it was less than 250,000. It was in that area. So substantially different.
Can you break down there's two people that can actually get to the point.
Right, let's talk about that.
Yeah, can you break that down for me? That two people can actually get to become elected after the general.
After the general. So yeah, that's very important. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
So you've got 9 people running. And ultimately, the primary, which is next week, it'll be the top 2 vote getters will go on to the general. Okay. It's a nonpartisan race. Like, there's no Democrat or Republican in this race. It's nonpartisan.
Cool.
So, and they'll face off in November 4th. Whereas right now, and so voting is already going on right now.
Yes.
So, and when I was telling you about taking people or having people go to the polls and people taking people to the polls, that was an opportunity for people to show up at the clerk's office, fill out an absentee ballot, and then once you fill out it, they'll give you the ballot. You can vote right there and turn it in right there.
Amazing.
And, my son voted. A lot of my clients voted. And, we made reels about it and uploaded it onto social media because a lot of young people watch social media. Not as much as people my age and older. We watch Facebook and things like that.
Well, they're saying even with Trump's election, that podcasting had a lot to do with the whole different crowd, like Joe Rogan.
Joe Rogan, I was going to say that. Yeah. Oh, no, it did.
They helped with the election a little bit, huh?
Yeah. Not a little bit. I think a lot.
You think?
Oh, yeah. And so you can vote now. Early voting started on Saturday.
Yes.
Which means that there are 8 polling locations. There's, I believe, 17 drop-off locations.
Oh, you can drop off your vote.
You can drop off your vote in you'll see these boxes around the city of Detroit.
Oh, cool.
You'll also see our signs around those voting areas now because, every person who's serious about running is going to want to, make sure that their presence is there. People see your name.
Oh, yeah. I got flyers all over my windshield the other day at the Backwoods and Bonfires event. It was like 3 different people.
Okay.
I was like, this is cool.
Yeah.
Like, you guys are really...
Oh, no, people are, but the problem is that, people have still... We need to inspire these people. And what we need to do is we need to be more transparent with people. We need to be more honest with people. Yeah. And we need to show them by example. And that's the thing. So... But the voting's going on now up until August 3rd, and then August 5th is the big day.
Obviously, one person who's super prolific and very much has the media's attention, and it seems to be promoted on every platform in the city, is Mary Sheffield.
Mm-hmm.
And she has a charisma about her and history about her that I think she familiarized herself with tons and tons of people, especially, like I said, she shows up to all the events and everything that has to do with the Detroit community.
Well, not necessarily. She didn't show up this weekend, and she promised the church that she would show up. And if you look at Sam Robinson, who's Sam Robinson, he's doing everything elections, and he writes for the Chronicle. He has a contract with the Chronicle, but he has his own media channel, kind of like how you do. I don't think he does a podcast, but he's up on X all the time. And there's people who are voters who are disappointed in her in District 5. I live in District 5. And they say she doesn't show up to a lot of things. Really? And one of the voters said, that's the reason why I'm not voting for her. So she shows up to the things that are popular, and she shows up to the things that are populated with people, which, don't get me wrong, that's important. But, you have to be true to your word, and this weekend, I was at Bishop Way's church over on Curtis, and she had committed to it. And my understanding, I only have a little bit of it because some of the organizers were very upset, and Bishop Ways didn't want to, really, bring that out as much, but they did before he got a chance to stop them. And, they sent their staff in. They saw that there wasn't that many people. I'm assuming it wasn't as many people as they wanted it to be, yet there was an online presence that watched the forum. They called it a debate. It was actually a forum. And she didn't show up. Her security detail came in, and ultimately she didn't.
I wonder if she was at the Clarissa Shields fight.
I don't know.
I don't know. Here's the thing about that. Yeah. With Mary, the thing, somebody said, Ice Revezo was on the podcast recently, and he pretty much said that the one thing he really loves about Mary is that she's been always attending things even before there was an election. She feels like a lot of people that are running start popping out of the woodworks to start showcasing themselves more, but Mary's always been around and always been involved.
Yeah. Well, and that's fair, but I've been around too. I have been throughout this community, as you can see, with fighting with Black Lives Matter. I was the only person to fight for reparations the council, they approved it, but mine, I was actually the only one who financed a lot of the commercials and the reparations campaigns. So, yeah, I mean, that's a fair comment. But being involved in your community, doing the things in your community, I haven't done it with the access to government. I've done it with the community. And, as I say, I've done it on my own time and my own dime, so all those things. And, I didn't do it for any political candidacy. If you talk to Mike Duggan, Mary's wanted to be mayor for the past 12 years. So, that's what Mike Duggan told me. That was the first time I had a long conversation with our mayor. And, he's like, yeah, well, she's been working on being mayor for 12 years. So that is not necessarily an accurate statement. It appears that way. But, she's showing up and, she's got, legitimate supporters. So be it. Yeah.
Is there anybody that you feel like if you do get to the top two, who do you think you would be up against? Who do you think would be the other person on the other side? Conlich or anybody? Like, do you think...
What? Not say that again.
Conlich? Is that how you say his name? Or Conlich?
Oh, Kenlock.
Kenlock, my bad.
Kenlock,
oh my
Kenlock.
God, yeah, sorry. I messed up his name.
The polls, if you look at the polls, which I don't necessarily trust the polls. Even our president has shown you not necessarily to trust the polls, because he's always been down in the polls. Trump
Crazy,
has been,
man. It's wild. So.
Yeah, and on a national level to be down in the polls, that and to still win, that's significant.
It's pretty insane. Yeah.
So if you look at the polls, me getting into the general, the likely contender would be Mary Sheffield, given the numbers. I was talking to a guy who's worked with unions. He's more of a consultant in the political fabric. And he believes, that he believes strongly in our campaign as well as I do. But he believed it would be Santil Jenkins. And, we don't know what's going to happen because we still got another week, start a week from tomorrow, and it's a new race tomorrow. It's a new race every day.
Day one, if you are elected mayor, what would be your first task?
Well, the first things that I'm thinking about, even before day one, November 5th, you've got to start on the transition. And there's really 4 things that you have to focus on. We have a 13-point plan that talks about small business, not necessarily talks about, but creating small business revival, having, opportunity for returning citizens, protecting our most vulnerable in society, our seniors, our disabled, our young people. But the top 4 things, number one, absolute number one, and I don't think anyone's going to disagree with this, even though they may not have. And one of the things I can say about my campaign is the things that I've said, most have copied. So that's the best form of flattery. Most have copied. So
well, it's been copied so far.
Well, a lot of people are talking about a forensic audit. I want to audit the finances of the city of Detroit. So I want to know how money's been spent and how we best can spend it going forward, because we're going to have to do more with less. There's no more Biden giving money to the city of Detroit and ARPA funds and all those other things. But the top 4 things,
yes.
Public safety, number one. You got to make people feel safe. You got to bring down the crime. And not only bringing down the crime numbers, people actually have to feel safe. Perception of safety is just as important as actual safety. So that has to happen. Education. Those 2 things, you're not going to be able to grow your city. And the reality is the only way to get out of the situation that we're in as a city is to continue to grow. Population, business, activity, economics. That's the only way you're going to grow, is to increase your population and increase your business activity. The only way people are going to come back. And I'm talking about coming back. Those people, it's a known fact. Between 2000 and 2020, 295,000 black people left the city of Detroit. And, the problem I have with that is no one's asking why. And, but if you want to bring those individuals back, it has to be, and when you bring people back, and you bring more residents in, the effect of it is it creates more revenue for the city of Detroit. It increases your tax, it increases your tax revenue, increases your business tax revenue. All of those things will increase. Your revenue sharing from the state of Michigan, it will increase. All of those things will increase. And so then you have that. But then education. If I'm a young guy and I'm just starting out with a family and I got a young kid or 2 kids, and my wife and I are going to buy a house, first question I'm going to ask the realtor is, how are the schools? And I don't think in some areas that realtor is going to be able to respond in a way that's going to make me feel comfortable sending my kids to those schools. In fact, that's one of the reasons why my wife and I chose to leave the city of Detroit. Well, my wife was running the show, So this is my first wife who passed away, but she didn't work outside the home, and she made the decision. She says, "Look, my son was turning 6. He's getting ready to go to first grade." Says, we're going to either send him to private school or we're going to move out the city. And at the same time, she says, look, I just don't feel safe. And we lived in a great neighborhood, and she didn't feel safe. So we picked it up and moved out to Grosse Pointe Shores. And that's where we were for some time. And then, unfortunately, she passed away. And for several years there, I was a single dad. And ultimately moved back.
Wow.
Yeah. And then I got married, and my current wife, she's adopted my kids. I mean, you couldn't write a better story. You couldn't write a better story. But along the way is a lot of pain and heartache and, despair and,
the resilience though to just keep pushing forward. It's incredible. It was really took a village. My family helped out, and for the first time in my life, sought therapy, and saw the value in that. Something I never thought I would do, or never thought I would need to do, and so you understand some of the things that can happen in life, and it really makes your life more rich. So of course. Yeah. We talked about 1 and 2 as far as your agendas for first days in office.
And 3 and 4, housing and economic development in the neighborhoods. It has to have that. I could say economic development and housing, but if it don't say in the neighborhoods, it don't mean nothing. It just doesn't mean anything,
right.
And when we're talking about public safety, we're talking about in the neighborhood. We're talking about education. We're talking about in the neighborhood. Because it's, I have this saying, it's, great schools make great neighborhoods, which will ultimately make a great city.
Right.
And so you need all of those things to be working, and they're going to work not against big business, but with big business, because you can't alienate them. You bring them to the table too, because it benefits them to see the growth of the city, rather than just continuing to grow downtown.
The question is kind of then, why hasn't it been aggressively, why hasn't somebody aggressively touched on those things as far as the neighborhoods are concerned when there's been so much time to do it? Like, what do you think is stopping things from transforming in the way that you're projecting it to be?
I could say it a lot of different ways, that some people, their focus was downtown. Their focus was building up the business. I can only speak to, and I don't know why, because to me, I kind of get a little upset even thinking about it. That we're really even on this topic of why. But that's one of those things where you have to default and punt, and you say, you got to ask them.
Right.
Because it almost seems like a tremendous lack of empathy and understanding and appreciation for the lives of the individuals who have made this city what it is. And, to leave them out there, and to, we have some areas that are so neglected, that are going to be the areas that we have to pour into first.
Right. You see what downtown they did. Like, downtown was like,
well, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, they spent tons of money.
Oh yeah. And whose money is it? It's the citizens' money. A lot of that money is a lot of money that they use for tax abatements and tax incentives, tax captures, all that's coming out of the coffers of the city of Detroit, which is our tax dollars. So, yeah, my plan wants to take those tax dollars right there and start investing in our neighborhoods, investing in the infrastructure in our neighborhoods, investing in, the bones of our neighborhood with housing, with, developing our commercial corridors, all those things that you do. And again, I don't want to stop what's going on downtown. Who would? It's a wonderful thing. We have the number one waterfront in the country.
Amazing.
So I don't want it to be that because I'm pro neighborhood that I'm anti big business or anti downtown. It just seems it is a great unfairness to the citizens of the city of Detroit to not participate in the growth in their neighborhoods. It just, it's unfair.
Sure. When we go through most Detroit platforms or even the news or anything like that, you notice that crime rates or crimes are like the most prolific things that are addressed throughout these platforms and media companies. Obviously, they do it because it's what gets people's attentions, but it's also real things that are happening. Is part of it mental health that that crimes happen so often? Is it just because of circumstance where people feel the need that this is the only way out of a situation is to find violence or be violent, or street codes and things of that nature makes it for people to need to retaliate or do something significant to somebody else? When you're looking at all these aspects for why crime could happen, what do you think is the forefront of why most of the crime is happening?
Well, no one crime is the same, right? And I'll say this, this is not just a plug. This is a fact. I know more about this than any of the other candidates, considering how I've grown up, what I do for a living, which is, I don't know if you know this, I'm the former city attorney in Highland Park. I'm the current city attorney in Inkster. I am the city attorney that advises Detroit City Council.
Yes.
And I represent a lot of different governments in Southeast Michigan, a lot of different politicians in Southeast Michigan. So I understand that component and that side of the administration aspect of policing.
Yeah.
And in fact, I've represented our police chief at one point in time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a life of work of 28 years, and then the other side, the people who've been charged with crimes. I've represented the families of people who've been charged with crimes. Because there's another component. There's another aspect of any kind of case when you're talking about crime. You're talking about the defendant, the defendant's family, the complainant, or what we would call the victim, the victim's family, the people who are surrounded in this. It touches a lot of different people. And then you're talking about, on the other side, you got the police, and you have their policies on what they're doing. So I understand all of those things. So when you talk about is mental health, I think it's a huge factor. And we have not, really doubled down on integrating. Right now, our former chief, he put social workers in the police departments, but we need more. We need more of that, and he is now the head of DWIN, which is the mental health organization for Wayne County. So that is that's an individual that I have a great relationship, that I look forward to doing a partnership with Detroit and Wayne County to provide these mental health services, because they have resources. Their resources are far outweigh what the city of Detroit gets. And so they're always, Wayne County is looking to do more partnerships with the city of Detroit as we look to find ways to leverage relationships and get those assets to the city of Detroit. But you absolutely, because my mindset and what I've seen in many cases is just because you have a 911 call doesn't mean that you need an officer to show up with his gun drawn. Right. It could be an episodic incident of mental health decline. That's what you have. You have to assess it that way. You have to have your officers trained to identify that. You have to make sure that they have some form of and level of ability to converse with with the person that they may ultimately arrest, but still do it in a humane way to the extent that everybody stays safe, because you still want the officers to be safe. You want, officer goes out, signs up for duty, and goes out. Most important thing is he comes home to his family.
When we're talking about the community, organizations within the community that try to help balance things out, you can talk about like Nutzik and New Era Detroit. How do you feel about organizations like that? I'm not to use the words helping to police, but being a part of the community.
No. Let's not shy away from that. So in the Perkins plan, where we have the redesign of our community district by district, because Detroit. In Detroit, you're not going to police 6 Mile and Gratiot the same way you do Palmer Woods. So right now, where they deploy police resources throughout the city, it has to be aligned to that particular community. In Southwest Detroit, you're going to need people to be able to who know how to communicate with people who might not speak English. In Northeast Detroit, other side of Hamtramck, there's a huge Bengali Yemeni community. So you're going to need people who understand their culture, their language, and people who can act as who can speak. Because some people just don't speak the language. So you're looking at those organizations like New Era Detroit, they're about prevention, right? I think there's more upside in prevention than intervention. But unfortunately in America, everybody wants to get into intervention. But the problem with intervention is the problem's already happened.
Yes.
The goal of those organizations that you just mentioned is to prevent crimes, to prevent the social decline. And I think we need to be more heavily invested in them and make sure that they're getting the training that they need also. Yes. Right now they're getting, for some of them, it's a sizable amount from going from zero to now the city investing in them, but it needs to be more, because prevention saves over the long term, because there's a societal cost to crime, that they can actually put a number on it. These deaths that we're facing from violent crimes and all the violent crimes that may not necessarily result in death, there is a negative economic impact on our society when those things happen.
For sure.
So putting our money towards prevention is the smartest investment, and coordinating that in a more community-styled policing that's going to be designed. You're going to design it based upon the input of your neighborhood organizations. I mean, like the lower, in my neighborhood, the lower North End community or the Gateway community, and you have those organizations that they're bigger than block clubs, but they represent swaths of the community, and they will be at the table. But not at the table also will be big business representatives, will be small business representatives, because you're looking forward to developing and having a society that is like when we talk about, like I hear my parents talk about Detroit, it's like a golden era. I can visualize it in my mind, even though I didn't really see it the way that they saw it. Where you think about it, in the city of Detroit, we have very few, if any, cinemas.
No.
You think about it. It used to be the Renaissance had one.
Bel Air is Bel Air in Detroit.
The Bel Air is still doing this thing. Yeah. But that's one. And what I do like about the Bel Air is that they are independent friendly. A lot of independent artists who produce films, and they want to use that as a venue that, they have created a business model that allows them to do that. And I really, those are the type of things where, they're ones that need to be supported, because they've been here when, Bel Air's been here since, do you know what the Bel Air was before?
What is it?
It was a drive-in.
Really?
Before all that mall up there used to be a drive-in.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it's a huge drive-in.
Man, how things transform.
Yeah, that's the 70s.
So when we're talking about, and we'll move on from the crime subject, because I feel like you've tackled it pretty efficiently, but when I'm thinking about this myself, I'm thinking, how much can a mayor actually do? What is a mayor actually in control of?
Oh.
So when somebody wonders what can the mayor actually do and what the mayor is expected to do, but he can't do those things specifically, what are things that people think a mayor can do, and what are things that a mayor can actually do to transform a city?
Well, mayor can't create jobs. But what a mayor can do is create an atmosphere that make the creation of jobs come around, right? So what are you doing? What do you mean by that? What you mean by that is, you bring and set the table for people to come and convene, and you sit down and say, listen, we're looking to put our city resources behind these projects, and we want these projects to be done in this way because the community has spoken, rather than it coming directly from big business saying, I want to do this, I want to do that. The community has to have a say in that, and again, there are going to be some projects that are significant enough that the city is going to want to get behind that business, that big business. But for now, I mean, there needs to be some form of moratorium on using city resources for the development of these large scale projects that really don't have a positive direct effect to the neighborhoods.
Yes.
So that's one thing that the mayor can do, and that's one thing that the mayor doesn't do, which is create jobs, but he creates the atmosphere. The mayor can't really. The mayor has to get city approval or city council approval to sell assets. But here's one thing that's interesting, and a lot of people are not talking about it. I think because a lot of people don't want to talk about it, is that it's just like as a mayor, I want to look at and study, and I think that it was wrong. The water department should not have been turned over to Glewa. Should not. And I can show how it is it violates the Michigan Constitution. It violates our law. And those are some of the things that, as a mayor, you can direct your law department to do that. These are significant things that people don't even understand, the intricacies and the details that go on and the high-level thought that's needed to understand that. Some people don't want to talk about those things. As a mayor, I want to engage the governor in asking for our Belle Isle back. These are assets.
What do you mean asking for Belle Isle back?
Belle Isle's leased to the state right now as part of the bankruptcy that happened. And, that is no longer, it's owned by Detroit, but not managed or, it's leased. So, it's a state park right now. Wow. And, I think that's significant, because there are ways to generate revenue from that, but it's a gem of Detroit. I mean, it's a beautiful.
So there's no, Detroit owns it as far as like it's ours technically, but it's being leased at the same time.
Right. It was leased out on a long-term lease to the state of Michigan. If you think about it, look on the island. You have rangers who sort of police the island, and the state police that police the island, not Detroit Police Department.
Who profits off of the park now?
Well, I mean, to the extent that the park generates profit, it would be the state.
Wow.
It would be the state.
Is that a significant amount of money that could help Detroit?
It could be. And, I haven't looked at, but there's opportunity there that could generate.
Wow.
If you really looked at the things that I recall, there's a science center on the Belle Isle. There's a zoo on Belle Isle. There was a golf course on Belle Isle. There's a driving range over there, but there was a golf course on Belle Isle. There's a casino. Obviously, the casino. That was a casino. The big mansion on Belle Isle.
Oh wow.
Yep. And
that was a casino.
Yeah. Well, they used to have casino night and a lot of parties and big huge parties there.
Wow.
So going back to some of the things that the mayor can do, the mayor really controls policy. Really controls the police department. So these things and how the city is redesigned, a mayor he's the CEO, the chief executive officer of the city of Detroit. So imagine that, we can get as technical as you like, but it doesn't even need to go further than that because we all understand a CEO and how that CEO can operate and, the restrictions and, like you got a board of directors in a corporation. But in this situation, you have the mayor and you have the separation of powers, and the legislative arm is the city council.
I want to get to talking about business. And is everybody good, by the way? I don't want to make sure everybody's
I'm good. I'm good.
Getting into business and your plans for business. I mean, I know this isn't like super relevant, but today I was reading about how Detroit is trying to grant $700,000 to the city for startups and to help small business owners grow. Which, I mean, it doesn't sound like that much money to me, but I mean, it's something where I think people are excited about it, just the idea of it and the possibility of it. But what's your business plan for Detroit?
Well, the business plan for Detroit is really starting with the redesign of our city. It not only happens from the perspective of how you redesign policing, the education, but economic and housing development. And I have what's called a Detroit first mentality. And what I mean by that is Detroiters should have the opportunity to take and enjoy the contracts that come through and through the city of Detroit, and the employment that comes through the city of Detroit. Those things should come to our residents and our resident corporations first and foremost. But as far as designing, clearly we need to have more walkable communities. We need to have, economic vitality in our commercial corridors in our community. It's just like I'm using the example because I live in the North End, and Oakland Avenue is one of the main arteries. You have Woodward that really kind of sort of is the border for the North End, from the Boulevard all the way up to Highland Park is the border. And so Woodward is Woodward. Everyone knows Woodward is in the city of Detroit, the major street in the city of Detroit. But you have Oakland Avenue. And along Oakland Avenue, you're starting to see some development, but you got vacant land that you want to have. You have the increase in property valuations. So now that creates a great opportunity for small businesses and with the help of big business. Sometimes people say, well, big business doesn't want to tool down to do small projects, but that's where you create that atmosphere of creating relationships. Yes. You create that atmosphere of creating partnerships, and you tell them, look, we will be behind this relationship and provide you the support that you need. When we're talking about the businesses that will ultimately go and fill in those buildings and those structures that we intend to build in these areas, and you're talking about the grants, it's a good thing. Don't get me wrong. I just think I think it's too little, too late. It almost seems, what it seems? It's a little insulting in some respects, because these are things that we've long since needed. I don't think anybody would disagree with that you would need it. And it sounds to me like you're proposing these things because you're looking for elevation. You're looking for to go on to greener pastures. If it's Duggan, he's looking to be governor, and he wants to say, "I left you with this." Why wasn't that some of the the higher priority things? And I understand when we came in, we're dealing with the bankruptcy, and we had to get through those things. But along the way, it's not that difficult to put your focus on it if you're going to be intentional. The same goes for city council. I understand city council doesn't make all the decision making, but I always tell people the squeaky wheel gets the oil. But where you have a city council that's made an agreement to go forward on the Duggan agenda, then they weren't championing the people. They weren't. It's clear. I mean, they're not going to disagree. If you ask them those questions, they're not going to disagree that happened.
What about the contributions from people like Dan Gilbert, the Ilitch family, the funds that they've provided, the grants that they've provided, the significance of that? And do you feel like that could be utilized better, or do you feel like it wasn't utilized to its full potential?
We need more. I mean, you all have benefited. In fact, let's talk about the Ilitches. The Ilitches, in their agreements with the city of Detroit, made specific promises that they didn't keep. And when they didn't keep those promises, they wrote a check for the penalty. So what they did was they factored in the failure to keep those promises and the penalty that they would pay into the cost of doing business. But yet, that's not what the city of Detroit wanted. They didn't want their money. They wanted their participation in the growth for Detroiters. They wanted the participation in the growth of in the development of land, and they didn't do it.
So when the media presents the grants or donations or whatever you might call it, or business incentives or whatever, it's really them just paying the penalty, and the penalty appears to be some type of giving, or is it like no?
No.
Oh, okay.
What I'm saying is, they do have the Gilberts. I'll tell you, the Gilberts have a foundation. In their foundation, they pay. They're paying people's taxes so that they don't lose their homes.
Yeah, cool.
You know something? I'm gonna get behind that every day of the week. Every day of the week. What I'm gonna get behind them is say, I need more. You know what I'm saying? I need more.
Okay.
It's kind of like if you look at a guy like Warren Buffett. He's trying to give away, a substantial portion of his wealth before he dies.
Yeah.
And, that's the kind of philanthropy that we need. Just like the Wilson Foundation is responsible for building up the Riverfront West. And, but it's a spin down nonprofit. What that means is ultimately the money will be spent and it will dissolve. It's not something that's continually like the Ford Foundation. The Ford Foundation is something that is, year after year, one of the mega foundations. So that's what you want to have, those organizations with these public-private partnerships. And, you want to see more of that kind of activity and that philanthropy where they're the giving. Because giving is infectious.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? If I get one billionaire to give, the other ones are going to give too.
For sure.
They will get behind it. So what I meant by that is, when you've used and you made an agreement and you used the financial resources of the city of Detroit in order to build what you want to build and build the business that you want to build, but yet the other side of that promise you didn't keep, and rather than keeping that promise, you write a check. That's not cool.
Do you got 10 more minutes in you?
Yeah.
Okay. If I used to use the restroom real quick, I want to get back to you for a little bit. We're gonna close out in a little bit. I wanted to get to some personal stuff, not personal stuff, but stuff from your history. Starting a law firm,
right,
and being one of the biggest black-owned law firms in Detroit, and the success of that. And can you talk about what it took to get to that point? Because like you said, you never were with any other law firm before that. You kind of went just by yourself, solo.
Well, it's kind of being from Detroit, being raised in Detroit, being, all things Detroit. It wasn't without the struggles and the pains. And, you have to be selfless. There's sometimes where, the people who work with you, they have to get paid. You don't necessarily.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, you're a business owner, and you recognize the investment that you're making in your business, the contractors that you use, if you hire people, you're going to make sure that they're paid so that ultimately when you're successful on a particular project, you'll recoup on that. And, there's no different in a law firm. And over the years, there's been, growth and retraction, cutting. Those are the things that a CEO does that are sometimes difficult decisions to make in order to continue the life of the business and to make sure that you keep the promise to the people that you represent and the promise to the people that work to help you fulfill the promise to the clients. So it was many sleepless nights. I anticipate there'll be more sleepless nights, and I know there's going to be some sleepless nights running the city of Detroit. So the activity's consistent.
Yes.
Building, the CEO of a city, CEO of a law firm, and other businesses that I've started.
Are there any cases that you can talk about that were on almost close to the mainstream level or anything like that? Did you ever represent anybody that was like super notable?
Well, I represent the prosecutor in Macomb County, Pete Lucido.
Jeez.
That's what, yeah. So, he is, I've had an opportunity to represent him over the years in his budget issues that he's constantly been at odds with the county executive, Mark Hackle. And, we've been successful both times.
Cool.
And then, along the way, he was charged with some, I won't say charged, these are civil fines. It's not a criminal case. But he was cited for some ethics violations that we've gotten and represented him and ultimately got those dismissed. I did the same for the Wayne County Sheriff, Ray Washington. I represent the Wayne County Treasurer. I represented the former Wayne County Sheriff, Benny Napoleon. Our client list, those are individuals who don't mind me talking about representing them. Now, there are other clients who are well-known individuals who might not want to talk about the fact that they've hired me as their lawyer. So sometimes it's something ominous, or negative about, that may be going off from a perception. But we don't do just criminal law. We do, like for Pete Lucido, the prosecutor, it was all about his budget and then about some ethics issues that he have that are now gone. And, he's free to continue serving the county. He never stopped serving the county, but, the attacks, sometimes they can get to you.
A lot of my friends, I have like probably thousands of rapper friends, probably more than that, tens of thousands of rapper friends. And I've talked to them, and I've been in situations myself where I realized the cards are kind of played against you sometimes when it comes to getting prosecuted in Detroit, or they might take advantage of you. One person we had on our couch was Marvin Cotton Jr., who was wrongfully convicted of murder.
He's in our office.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah, Marvin's a guy. He was wrongfully convicted, served 19 years. But see, Marvin has kept up the promise. And what I'm talking about the promise is that, Marvin always, he wrote a book. I read his book, I bought his book, and I actually buy many of his books so I can send to people who are incarcerated. It's very inspirational. It's inspirational for the people who are incarcerated to give them hope. I send it to some of their family members so that they can understand, and and as a way of supporting Marvin financially, he's probably going to go back and give it away anyway. Marvin's that kind of guy who does a lot of philanthropy. He speaks all over the country. I think he just got a doctorate recently, but it's a guy who served 19 years. So, when he gets out, I meet him because I do a lot of returning citizens. I represent a lot of returning citizens, and, I'm working for some of their nonprofits because I want to fuel them with the American dream. Because sometimes it escaped a lot of them, and they're not making excuses, and I'm not here to make excuses for them. But now that they're out and they want to do something, I want to be a part of that. Just like Marvin, I said Marvin could afford his own office. I told Marvin, I said, I would love for you to come and be a part of our office. And, he doesn't come in much because he's all over the country speaking and stuff like that. But, but he brings in his clients, and, he's actually done some work for us on some projects for some life cases, and that we're trying to work and get these people an opportunity to get back into court.
When it comes down to his case, which I feel like a lot of people, I get messages all the time about people being wrongfully convicted. What is the separating factor that gets somebody wrongfully convicted that if they had just known a little bit more information, they could have not been convicted? Or is it the coercion?
Some of it's just some cheating ass cop.
Yeah.
That's I've been trying to keep it 100, man. You know what I'm saying? But when I talk about somebody who's been sworn to protect and serve, and they cheat and they lie, that's garbage, man. That's some bullshit, man. You think about it, people's lives. He gave away 19 years that he'll never get back. Never get back.
No.
And he didn't do it. I've seen so many of these cases, and I was actually I was an expert witness in a federal case testifying for one of the wrongfully convicted. And, fortunately, I work with his lawyer. His lawyer hired me, a guy named Wolfgang Mueller. He does a lot of those cases. We work a lot, very closely together. And he hired me to testify for this plaintiff. He's now a plaintiff instead of a defendant because now he's out. But, this guy has been, the effect it had on him being incarcerated, there's a lot of therapy that's needed. There's a lot of therapy that's needed anyone who's been incarcerated, period. Yeah. But this guy was successful and got a $10 million verdict. And I feel just as much a part of that as everybody else on that team. And it was a great outcome for a person who suffered tremendously, for a cop that freaking lied. Yeah. He says differently. And I've known this police officer for some time, but I've made up my mind in what I saw in that case, and it just, So, I don't know where we got off on that because I got a little emotional there, but you know what I'm saying? But it's you get that way if you're gonna, this in the practice of law. Yeah. The idea of losing freedom is so significant that, it is. I'll never, as long as I'm practicing law, once I go into the mayor's office, no more practicing law. But when I'm done, I'm going to go back out and practice law. I'll always do some criminal work because it is the closest thing to the stress and the realities of life than any other area of the law. It just is. It's, you could take someone's money, but it doesn't even compare to taking someone's freedom. Because that's a commodity that you can't replenish. Yes, you cannot. So, but
when it comes to kind of cleaning out certain, I guess you could say even the police department, the fire department, any of these departments, do you think there's a cleaning that needs to be done, or do you think it's just like it's good right now? It's at a good state.
No. You if you think that, then you are going to condition yourself to keep it the same way. That doesn't mean that the changes that I have for police and fire, not as much as fire, but as police, really. That's because, like I said, safety is my number one concern. Those people who are going to change with the times, come on with it. They're already trained. They're already, it takes about over $40,000 to train an officer. If we have officers who are willing to learn, willing to be retrained, willing to go along with the program, as they say, then come on with it. Ride this train with us. Ride our city to prosperity. Ride our city to a better place. Ride our city to a place where people have a great relationship with law enforcement and the police and understand that they're not to be feared, but they're to be sought after to protect and make sure they're safe, rather than the other way around that, here comes these cops and, getting shaken down and all this other stuff. But, so there needs to be a retooling, I would say. Not necessarily getting rid of everyone. And, that's not even a reasonable thing to get rid of everyone. But over the course of time, as and some people will not buy into the new system. And, they'll leave, hopefully gracefully. And, if they're leaving, then, let us know so we know we have to fill in these holes and these gaps. And we'll keep on, building our city and, try to find a place for them. An interesting story about Coleman Young. Coleman Young was really my idol when it comes to mayors and it comes to the spirit of understanding the heart of the people. And, he didn't like to fire people or anything like that. And it's a story. He told one of his top guys, one of the guys was not performing. He wasn't. And they were going to have to let him go. So he gives the guy the order, go, release him, fire him, whatever. So the guy comes back next day or two and says, "Did you do it?" He says, "Yeah, I did it." And he kind of had a little attitude about it because, he was like, "Why'd you send me out to do it?" And, and then the guy says, so he had some stacks of papers and he says, "Here, take this." He says, "What's that?" He says, "These are some opportunities that guy has. Now go find him a job." That's a person who really looks out for people, even if you're not going to be part of your plan and everything like that. But, you know, that's a person who understands the heart of a person, understands that person probably has a family, that person has a life, and you don't want to see it stop. You know, you don't, you know, so, you know, that's kind of one of my favorite stories about him.
I'm going to get a little controversial for 1 second.
Yeah, let's do it.
You being a lawyer and a Detroiter, do you think that there is any fear of something repetitive is happening as what people interpreted Kwame Kilpatrick's campaign? Do you think that people fear that something like that could happen again?
You know, I think that you're looking at an individual who was 30 or 31 years old at the time. And even though he was a lawyer, he never practiced. He never got a chance to understand what it was and the impact that you could make in people's lives. You know, and again, I'll say that again. He's 31. I'm 55. And, you know, my life experience is obviously different than his, much different. It's different than anyone's. Everyone's life experience is unique, but mine has been one of giving. And, you know, I don't know, you know, it's interesting that you say that, you know, because I have, you know, I've described this thing as what's happened to me in my campaign, which is I've described this thing as being Detroited. I don't know if you've seen it on social media. And I want to take back that word, Detroited, because I'm using it using the name Detroit in a negative way, but I had no way of describing why, you know, mainstream media would not want to put me on the stage with other colleagues or other contenders for this position. And in fact, I polled higher than at least one of the other individuals by their polls. I don't trust polls, but by even their poll. And I was not allowed to participate. And, you know, I came out and I talked about, you know, being Detroited is being, you know, by mainstream media or what people might look at as the white infrastructure being ostracized and not allowed to participate. And so it's like being voiceless, faceless, and not having an opportunity to have a seat at the table. So, you know, but I'm thinking of a different word. So we're not going to use the word. I won't say it again, you know, because, you know, Detroit has to be used in a positive way. If for so many years it has not, you know, it throughout the world, throughout the country, it's sometimes has had a negative feel to it. Although, you know, having had an opportunity to go work anywhere in the country once I graduated from college, I wanted to come back here. I didn't want to go anywhere else, you know, and you know, had opportunity before law school and even after.
Yeah.
So getting back to it, I don't think that that's the reason why that they align me being a lawyer. You know, here's another thing. You know, that would be some racist ass shit if somebody did that. You know why? Because Duggan is a lawyer. So you don't associate that with him. You know what I mean? So that you know, that would be, you know, that
Or more so just on the idea that, like, you can invest in somebody and then all of a sudden, like, it could be all for nothing. Like, did that scare people?
That could be with anyone.
Yeah.
You know, but to align that and, you know, and I'm not saying that you're saying that. I'm saying that could be, that's out there in the atmosphere. And those are sort of the racist ideations that we can't allow and the things that we can't allow to be used to sort of bastardize. I'm not going to allow it to be used to bastardize my campaign because my life's work speaks for itself. You know, I'm a man for others. You know what I'm saying? I give the community my right arm, and you know something, they give me their leg. Yes. You know what I'm saying? So it is a relationship of a giving relationship, and you know, have never gone without. Yes. In a sense, dealing with our community. So yeah, you know, and at the end of the day, you know, you look at Kilpatrick's situation, and it really. You know, people are still disappointed in him because of what they saw as far as potential. And it really still even permeates today by even that question that you asked that I'm sure is something that comes up in conversation. Yes. You know?
Donald Trump recently has spoken about making work with Japan. The big three feels like they're going to be impacted, specifically in Detroit too. It feels like there's going to be a major impact because of this. what can you do as mayor to make sure that things stay afloat for the Motor City?
Well, the reality is, we are still identified as the Motor City, but we're really, Chrysler, General Motors, they are really, well, there's other plants in here, smaller plants in the city of Detroit, but, Southeast Michigan is still the hub for automotive, and also the R&D industry, research and development industry here. So what, as a mayor, can we do? We can make sure that we're looking towards, as those businesses, that industry becomes more technical, that we're making sure that we start reaching out and going into those industries of tech jobs and AI jobs, because that's what's going to be fueling not only just the automotive industry, but a lot of other industries. So, that's our focus, is looking at the more innovative jobs, because there is a growing tech environment in this community, in the Detroit community and the surrounding communities. Yeah. So we're always going to be more inviting. And what we're going to do, though, we're going to make Detroit more business friendly. Yeah. That's what we're going to do. We're going to make Detroit more business friendly, making it easier to start a business, making it, without getting rid of the idea of safety. Yes. Still, creating the element of safety that's necessary when you're talking about the developing properties and, the small businesses that are going to grow. But, because that is something that I hear all over, is Detroit this, Detroit that, because it takes so much money, and there are no inspectors. We're gonna fix that issue and make the doors open and bust the doors open for business development. But it's gonna be business development that's gonna be inclusive, not exclusive of Detroiters. It just has to be.
I appreciate you taking the time to speak with us about all these things that I'm pretty sure a lot of people are concerned when they're going to vote. As far as people getting out to go vote, it seems like it's very, very. I know you're saying there's some roadblocks to voting, and they make it difficult for some, but it seems like with the drop-off system and all these things that it's convenient in a lot of ways too. Can you tell people what the best ways to approach the days are coming up?
Yeah, I mean, best way is to go vote now. Yeah. You don't have to, the excuse of having a line is not really existing right now. You can go in and there's so many different voting sites. There's 8 actual voting sites. You can go down to the election commission. They had a huge rally the other day at the election commission for the vote. So no, this thing was most importantly.
Yes.
Obviously, I want people to vote Perkins for the people. I want them to vote for Todd Perkins for mayor. I do. But even, I told you I'm a man for others. There's an element of selflessness that comes with that. I want people to vote. Yeah. I'm confident if they go vote, they're going to vote for me. But notwithstanding that, they have to vote, because if we don't vote, we don't get counted. And for the reality is if I was someone who was in, controlling the game of chess that's being played on top of the city of Detroit, if these people are not voting, why should I take their issues into account? They didn't see it necessary or find it important to vote. So you understand what I'm saying? So you have pretty much aligned yourself with not being counted and not, making sure that the interests that you have and the issues that you want to be brought to the table are going to be something that's important to those who are in power.
A lot of youngsters, even when I was young and I didn't vote, I remember people would ask me who you voted for, and when I said nobody, I felt lame. I was like, oh, man. I kind of feel lame right now.
No, but that's a good feeling. Cool. See, you need to market that. You have this position.
Right on.
You have all these flowers, and I look forward to people like you. You're not so old. And I still feel like I'm still young enough to connect, but what I do is I deal with a lot of younger people who are my voice, but you definitely are in the middle thing. You're not 10, you're not 18 or 20.
What's happening?
Yeah, but you're young enough that they listen to you. Look, right, you've got a platform, man.
You're right.
Use that platform.
That's what I'm doing.
I got it. Yeah. But the way you described it, is that's how they got younger, in understanding how they marketed getting young people off of smoking cigarettes. They marketed it amongst themselves and made it not cool. That kind of thing. Like, it's just that simple to make voting cool, to make voting something that is, the bedrock of our, and the cornerstone of our lives.
Yes.
So
that's what I mean. Even though I know he's kind of like in the dark right now, but I think Diddy had vote or die at one point.
Oh yeah,
and it was like hip hop.
No, he did. I mean, people who've done bad things could have done good things too.
Yeah.
And whatever he's got to do, that's for him to do.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we can't negate his impact in doing this. A lot of rappers and artists who Jay-Z and a lot of people who have gotten people out to the polls.
Yes.
And it just, unfortunately, it hasn't been marketed that much in the city of Detroit right now. And that's what I've been championing, telling other people, using my clients, the artists, the rappers that I have, using them, having them go vote. Like I had Lil Bro YBN.
Yeah.
He went and voted, and you see it on his website, on his social media channels, and on mine. He went to vote, and then he described to people how much voting, how easy it was, and the guy gets 30,000 views.
Yeah.
So, and I've had young people come up to me and say, "You're his lawyer," and I voted because you said he said to vote.
That's pretty cool.
Oh no, that's super cool.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
That's super cool.
Why being Lil Bro?
Yeah.
Yeah, you represented the guy. That's crazy.
Yeah.
And so because he had the influence, and because he is considered cool to the younger generation, they all were like, "Let's go."
Yeah, they did.
Like
I've had several people come to me and say that.
That's amazing. I'm gonna read you some Instagram comments, some fun stuff, and then we'll close out.
Okay.
This is from the promo. It's gonna be a little funny on the funny side.
Okay, let's have a little fun.
Let's have a little fun before we close out.
You don't mind.
Okay, so you had this is pretty cool. You had like a promo here. Who is Todd Perkins, and it says a lifelong Detroiter, a civil rights attorney, a fighter for justice. And then we'll just read the comments. You're wearing a pretty snazzy outfit, and the comments there was a couple funny comments. This dude said, "Never trust anyone who looks like Don King." That was the funniest comment I've ever read in my life. Some people do say that your outfits are a little more on the flamboyant side. Can you address like the outfit selections?
Well, I mean, like today. I mean, this is a summer suit. We're dealing with summer. I mean, I always say, like I was in court today and I'm in front of the judge. He says, "Nice suit." I said, "Real men wear pink." And it's, but. There's nothing outside of, I don't look like I don't feel like I dress. I don't feel like I'm flamboyant. I just don't. I wear French cuffs a lot, which means I got a lot of cuff links. And, I wear a lot of bow ties. Now, that's different, but, it's just something that's different. I wear ties too, but I do, my hallmark is really the bow tie, and it's been that way for maybe 13, 14 years. I can tell you how I got that way.
Yeah.
So my mom, I got this tuxedo. You got tuxedos because you go to black tie affairs. And my mom buys me this super nice Ferragamo bow tie. And, a lot of times when you're wearing a tuxedo, most of the bow ties are the ones that click back here, and they're kind of like already pre-made. This was not. It was that nice. So I wore it, but I wear it so delicately so it didn't come apart, right? And so I am, so finally it came loose, and I had to go somewhere. And I was in the process of going somewhere, and I didn't know how to tie it. So I get to the event, and I'm like, psst. Anytime you hear somebody say, psst, I'm trying to be not, and someone, I go into the hallway, and a guy helps me tie it. And I thought to myself, I am never not going to know how to tie a bow tie ever again. So what I did when I bought a couple of bow ties, started tying them in the mirror. And then I said, something? It's different. Most people don't wear bow ties. So I'm going to start wearing bow ties. And I think that I've brought back the bow tie revolution.
Like
really,
it.
I do.
I dig it.
So you think about it. You see a lot more people in bow ties. I think it's because of me.
Some people said, "Looks like brother just dropped a music video with this promo clip." So some people thought that the promo clip was a music video at first when they watched it, which is funny.
How does he get these comments? I don't see them. Where do you get them from?
It's on Instagram.
No, I know. I'm just getting into social media, and I don't know how to access that because I want to have as much access to this stuff as you.
Yeah, for sure. To close out with some interesting things about what's happening in the recent, I would say, crime department of the city real quick, the McDonald's girl. And there was a lot of recent attackings happening lately at job places. It seems like there's a lot of different things happening. What do you think about the McDonald's girl's circumstance, what she did, what you predict her consequence will be, and other workplace tragedies that have been happening a lot lately, and why do you think they're happening?
Stress, mental health decline, and these are just guesses because I'm not involved in those cases. And so what people don't recognize is that's why it's so important not to make a judgment about a person because, and that's the first thing that a judge will tell the jury is keep an open mind until all the testimony's heard. And so, but it, from all outward appearances, that McDonald's thing, I mean, how tragic can you be? But looking at this young lady who's the defendant, the person who committed this offense. And I don't think there's any issue of whether or not she committed this offense. I don't think that's the issue at all. We all recognize that she did this.
Yeah.
Why? I mean, you saw some of her prior posts and she just struck me as unstable. And, I think that some of the things that presented themselves on the job probably before that, and people are probably saying today, I should have recognized that was a trigger, but that was, what is her outcome? If she's in Macomb County, she's going to be evaluated now for competency and criminal responsibility, which are two unique aspects of the area of criminal law. And if she's deemed to not be competent and they can't make her competent within 18 months, then they'll, that case will ultimately be dismissed and she'll go over and a probate case will be opened and she will receive therapy and be detained, but ultimately it's almost like John Hinckley, who shot President Reagan. He shot President Reagan, but he was declared to be incompetent or I don't know if it was not criminally responsible back then, but he was, and he's now been released, but he spent 30, 40 years in there.
Wow.
So with her, we have to wait and see. But if she's declared to be competent and she is determined to be criminally responsible, I mean,
life for you?
It could be life. It could be 40 years.
Oh my God.
It really is going to be based upon, an office like the Macomb County Prosecutor's Office. They're going to go to the victim's family and say, what do you want us to go to trial and get life? Because if there's no offer, the young lady's going to go to trial. Why would I just plead to life?
Do you recommend that when people are being interrogated or detained,
never say anything? That's easy. Yeah. Never say anything. If you don't talk, you just might walk.
Can it be used against you for the fact that you just wouldn't speak at all?
So you cannot. That is a violation of your constitutional right. No one can make a representation by the very fact that you did make a statement and use that against you. That is absolute. There's no. Now, what happens is, let's say, for instance, your answer. Here's why you don't want to answer some of the things. Some people, some lawyers will try to, and I'm going to stop them from doing it. Prosecutor would say, look, you answered this but didn't answer that. You understand? So they want to create the perception of you had something to hide. That's impermissible. I mean, you don't really want to touch that as a prosecutor because now you're opening the door up to an appeal and really, that's just not, that's wrong. So, that's why I even cut you off. Statements, don't make them. Don't make them. If there's a statement to be made that's going to benefit you, make sure you have your lawyer present because you're talking about something that you only know what you know about it. And the other side, not only do they know what you might know, but they got other information that they haven't shared with you.
Yes.
So why would you make a statement at all?
Have you ever defended somebody that messed up the entire thing by speaking too much to detectives?
All the time.
Man.
And doesn't mean he can't be successful now. There's many ways to skin a cat.
Do you get frustrated when you hear the interrogation videos? You're like, why did you say that? Or do you just go like,
No.
all right, how do we fix the problem now?
Because, something, there's no reason for me to beat up somebody who already knows that they probably, by the time they interact with me, they probably already know that they shouldn't have done it. So there's no reason for me to beat that person up. They're already beating themselves up. It's my job now to uplift them. Even if, when I meet people here, it's my job to bring them here.
Yes.
And sometimes maybe we only get here. But my goal is always to uplift, not to denigrate, not to knock them down. Most people in society, man, they're kicking themselves anyway.
Yes. So you don't get emotionally devastated or anything. Cool.
I don't get devastated. I do get emotional because it's a passionate, you've got to be passionate about what you do. But, I'm never going to allow that to, if I'm talking about it to a client and I'm dogging them out, I'm doing it in a way that we're both laughing about it. You know what I mean? It's like, man, why the hell would you do this? Man, I don't know. You know what I'm saying? At that point, I've established a relationship with him, and he knows that I'm not beating him up and kicking him while he's down. No. They don't hire me for that. They hire me to be their counselor.
What is the biggest mistake that clients normally make when it comes to seeking legal advice or just seeking an attorney?
Not listening to it. Why would you spend your money? And sometimes the younger clients sometimes recognize that, or they feel like, I don't want to tell them everything. Then why spend your money? I tell them that. I say, look, I told a young guy earlier today, it happens as a younger guy, and he's not that young. I mean, he's in his 30s, but young to me. And, he's not telling me some things that I obviously know because I've watched certain things in this case. And I said, look, let's discontinue this relationship. He said, why? I said, because you don't want to talk about the reality of things. And I said, even if you don't want to talk about them, let's acknowledge that there's some things out there that you may not want to talk about, but don't lie to me because you're wasting your money. You're wasting your money. So, and don't think about what I might think about you. I work for you. You know what I'm saying? You were my boss. So,
right on.
But yeah, not listening to your lawyer. And, sometimes if you don't listen to your lawyer, maybe you don't trust that lawyer, or maybe you don't feel that lawyer's competent enough, then it's up to you to go out and get another lawyer that you feel comfortable with.
Absolutely. Like I said, it was awesome having you on. I love intellectual conversations like this where we can really give insight to not only the people in the city of Detroit, but people nationwide that do watch and tap in and tune in to educate themselves and get some type of learning experience, because I feel like a lot of times people are just posting nonsense, but this is like real gem information. Can you tell everybody one more time how they can follow you and the campaign and how they can get involved with you?
Well, yeah, absolutely, man. Thank you for that. Our website is perkinsforthepeople.com. Yes. That's PERKINSFORTHE people, PEOPLE.com. You also emails at info@perkinsforthepeople.com. You can call our office at 313-756-9000. We're looking for donations. We're looking for support. We're looking for volunteers. And a lot of times people don't have a lot of money, but $5 goes a long way. We'll make it go a long way.
For sure.
And hold on, but. And in fact, a lot of people, they can call my law office if they can't reach it at the campaign office. It's 313-964-1702. And, we've been here in the community. And can we stop for a second?
Yeah, go ahead.
What were you?
Instagram, buddy.
I don't know the sites. What are they?
Just search Todd Perkins and they'll pop up on
Okay.
Cool.
Okay.
All right, we're on.
Okay. So I'm also on Facebook and Instagram. Just search my name and, it'll pop right up. And, I'm the one that's a lawyer from Detroit.
Yeah.
So, you'll see that.
Are you the only lawyer running right now?
I am man, give it to me, man.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Yes, I am, sometimes, it's hard sometimes having I've always been taught to be humble because, if you don't, you don't want God's reckoning.
Yes.
So it's kind of hard sometimes when you talk about some of the things that you've done. But I am the only candidate who's mayor. I mean, no.
We're gonna reset it.
I said that, yeah.
You're good, you're good.
No. We could use that one, No, but I'm the only candidate that's a lawyer. And, I always say this, and I again, not being arrogant, I tell people, I say the sum total of all their experiences don't equal mine. There's no one who's negotiated contracts on a level that I have. There's no one that's written contracts. There's no one that's litigated in court. There's no one that has, represented, city council, represented cities, represented counties, represented the sheriff, represented the treasurer. There's no one, and those, and what you learn from cases is that you learn about people within those cases. You learn about what a sheriff does. You learn about what a treasurer does. You learn about what a prosecutor does, so like I said, those experiences are invaluable.
Yes.
And, I want to go and apply all of those experiences and those tools that I've honed over the years and, been training for this moment,
Yes.
all my life.
I'm stoked, man.
Yeah.
I'm so excited to see how everything turns out.
Oh, yeah.
Again, this has been a phenomenal talk. Thank you. I'm sure we'll have you back. If you become mayor, man, just pop back out.
Yeah,
what I'm saying?
I'm not going to change what I do now because I'm mayor.
For sure.
I won't.
Appreciate you doing this.
My dance card will be a little bit more full, but it just take me a little bit longer to circle back around.
I'll come to you. I'll pull up.
Oh, no,
on you.
come here.
Yeah, I'll pull up on the
It'd be great to just get out of the city for a second and just relax and let your hair down.
Todd, appreciate you doing this, man. Everybody go vote. We're at Parallel Sound Studio, Hello Visual, shooting this production throughout. Peace.